Good day and welcome America and beyond. I'm Tom Donahue for Tom Donahue Reports. Patriotism in action, putting America first, New World Order dead last. More talk as it pertains to secession. Now, is it reasonable? Is it prudent? Is it commonsensical? In all due practicality, is it possible? Well, it's not impossible, but it's improbable. And it doesn't make a lot of sense unless you're talking symbolically and unless you're trying to talk in a political framework. But nevertheless, do states and individuals have that right? Oh, I believe it's an inherent right. It's a God-given right. It's a right that all humans, in terms of human dignity, have. And the founders of this great country, the founders and framers, and more specifically, Thomas Jefferson, when he was the primary author of the Declaration of Independence, this is what the founders decided upon, and this is the original documents of the founding of this country, and it was a declaration, unanimous declaration of independence. And it was stated as such, and I've read this before on the program America's Town Forum, as well as the updated program in most recent times, whether it be Freethinker Radio or Tom Donahue Reports. When in the course of human events it becomes necessary for one people to dissolve the political bands which have connected them with another, and to assume among the powers on the earth the separate and equal station to which the laws of nature and nature's God entitles them, a decent respect to the opinions of mankind requires that they should declare the causes which impel them to the separation. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, and that they are endowed by their Creator with certain inalienable or unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. That to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed. That whenever any form of government becomes destructive of these ends, it is the right of the people to alter or to abolish it, and to institute new government, laying its foundation on such principles and organizing its powers in such form as to them shall seem most likely to affect their safety and happiness. Prudence indeed will dictate that governments long established should not be changed for light and transient causes, and accordingly all experience hath shown that mankind are more disposed to suffer, while evils are sufferable, than to right themselves by abolishing the forms for which they are accustomed. But when a long train of abuses and usurpations, pursuing invariably the same object, evinces a design to reduce them under absolute despotism, it is their right and it is their duty to throw off such government and to provide new guards for their future security. And the founders went on based on what they found to be tyrannical, and the subjugation was no longer going to be accepted. Now, the founding fathers didn't say only in this case, but they did caution. And essentially, in that cautionary note, they said, don't do this for light and just transient reasons. It has to be significant. And there has to be, you have to feel a sense of subjugation, and has to become insufferable. And so only you as individuals and only those states can make that call. And it's not just because Obama and the Obama administration. I think many felt this way, although maybe they didn't take because I think if you really find it, it's generally people more of a conservative, constitutional sensibility that is going to take these actions, because even on the left, and even in the well, I don't know if you could say the anarchist movement, but they generally, although I shouldn't say anarchist, but I think the further left you go, I think that they would find that government is the solution, and maybe its changes as its progressive nature would be more suitable. Whereas people on the more conservative constitutional end of the spectrum, they would say that limited government, but not anarchist or not no government, but responsible government, but very limited in nature, that this would be the rationale is that if pushed to the brink, they would reestablish a sense of order and a sense of government that was very limited and that actually upheld those laws, which meant with smaller government there would be more of a protection of individual rights and individual sovereignty and state sovereignty. With that said, in all likelihood, this will not advance. But it's fantastic to, at least from my perspective, in my view, to see that there is a national discussion. I would almost say a national disgust and discussion. And so you're mocked. So that there is ridicule and scorn. Who cares? I mean, what is worse than living as an abject slave, and a peon on the plantation? But the problem is you can't have the left and the right come together because many on the right still believe corporations are people, corporations are fine, and the rich can do no wrong. But on the left, they feel that government can do no wrong, except a few tweaks here or there for personal or civil liberties. So I want to get to what Ron Paul had to say about the secession movement. And it has become it's beyond just talk, good, bad, or indifferent. And it's beyond just petitions. It really is a movement. And it's great to see that, whether it's, this election, whatever the case or cause, it's about time that at least there is a serious discussion. And so I embrace the movement, but beware of the Alex Joneses, the bullhorn bullies that will try to evoke or provoke because they're agent saboteurs and provocateurs, because they would like to see blood in the street. And I'm saying that it's not time for a actual rebellion or revolution of ideas, and a restoration and reinstituting what the founders and the framers brought forward for us, that they gifted us, they granted us. Although it's really something that is gifted by God, but I still see it as a gift that was bestowed upon us by the framers and founders, and they recognized that the grantor was the creator of the universe. So my sense is that, will this go very far beyond a war of words? No. And should it at this point, in my view? No. But I remember there was I think he was running for a local office outside of Fort Worth. And all he did was allude to the fact that in the Declaration of Independence, it's kind of the last line of defense, and it's kind of like the last tool in the toolbox, or the weapon in the arsenal. And he lost the election. I don't know if it was re-election or election, but I believe it was a state office. And by the mere mention of this, he was considered of all things in Texas, to be too radical or revolutionary. I'm going to have to Google him and maybe I know I haven't worked as diligently as I promised, but I am going to be setting up more interviews and taping those and making those available. And I do have some invites out, and I know that I've only accomplished 2 so far, but I have other obligations, and it just takes time. I don't have a social secretary, so it's difficult, syncing those schedules with those that, and then there's a lot of people that want to be interviewed that I just don't have an interest in, or that I just don't feel like going down that path. But I may surprise you with some of the interviews in the future. But I think he was an elected official, and I think he lost re-election. And I'm sorry that I just don't recall it, but I talked about it on the program many months ago. But I think now you're going to find more people in the political arena are going to maybe talk about this or feel a little more comfortable, and even in the line of fire, because there will be fire from the major established media and even the two political parties, because and Ron Paul's on his way out, and Rand Paul is going to. He may just embrace a few quotes from his father, but that's about as far as Rancid Paul will go. And I did promise, and I will get to in either the next recording or maybe the one after that of Ron Paul's farewell speech. I want to spend, I would say, devote an entire program on those 38 points or those questions that were raised in his farewell address. But just staying with the subject of secession, let me pull up some remarks from Ron Paul. And this is what Ron Paul had to say. The article is entitled, "Secession Talks Raise a Lot of Worthwhile Questions." Representative Ron Paul makes clear his support of the idea of state secession in a statement appearing on his House website, meaning, because he was the House of Representatives, on his official political website, in which he calls the idea a deeply American principle. His missive comes as numerous states, most notably Texas, have gathered petitions for secession since the re-election of President Barack Obama. Is all the recent talk of secession mere sour grapes over the election, or perhaps something deeper? Ron Paul writes. While I wouldn't hold my breath on Texas actually seceding, I believe these petitions raise a lot of worthwhile questions about the nature of our union. Self-governance and voluntary association represent the foundation of our nation, he says. Thomas Jefferson supported secession as a last resort. Yeah, and that's a good way of putting that, the court of last resort. So again, Ron Paul's talking about self-governance and voluntary association. The Declaration of Independence makes reference to the idea secession is a deeply American principle, Ron Paul says. This country was born through secession. Some felt it was treasonous to secede from England. But those traitors became our country's greatest patriots. People are entitled to a federal government that doesn't claw away at their freedoms, he says. If the possibility of secession is completely off the table, there is nothing to stop the federal government from continuing to encroach on our liberties, and no recourse for those who are sick and tired of it. The federal government should drop laws that a widely held majority of people oppose. If the feds refuse to accept that and continue to run roughshod over the people, at what point do we acknowledge that this is not freedom anymore? ? At what point should the people dissolve the political bands which have connected them with an increasingly tyrannical, oppressive federal government ? So the essence is that secession talks, petitions, raise a lot of worthwhile questions. And there has to be a court of last resort. There has to be some bottom line. And if we felt like there was no recourse and that there was no political solution, if all others have been tried, and it would still be political, even if it meant taking extreme action. Again, this is nearly impossible or improbable, and in all likelihood, it's the slimmest of possibilities at this very time. I would say regretfully or regrettably that it almost appears because it's Obama. And in some ways, if this were to happen, let's say under Romney or under the Bush-Cheney regime, it would look less, and I hate to say this, but it almost appears somewhat racist. It almost appears somewhat that Republicans versus Democrats or conservative versus liberals, and that kind of stinks. Some people might use the word, that kind of sucks. But I generally don't like to use that word, but in a way, it kind of does. But again, it generally comes from those of the conservative constitutional camp, because they realize that it may take more. It may take a separation. It may take a radical downsizing from this governmental apparatus where so many on the left are wedded to, and they're embedded to a greater degree with government dependency and more of a dependency culture. So these are some of the issues that we face. Now, there are so many other issues I wanted to get to, and I'm realizing that this session I didn't really allot the time for those. So maybe I'll do another recording right after this one. Take a little breather. As you know, we don't have commercials. We don't take breaks, and I try to give you as much meat in a condensed form as possible. Now, some might say, well, you're not talking about Gaza and Israel. I really don't talk about those things. There's enough chatter, both from the mainstream and the alternative media. And I never said that my, forte was understanding all the intricacies of foreign affairs. Because I say that, well, really, I want to understand more about what's going on here and withdraw from those things. Now, the one thing I did want to say is that, wait a minute. Do you remember during the Republican National Convention, there were a few, little, they're not little to me, but for them, they just figured, well, they'll be obscure. No one's going to really raise them. They're not going to go anywhere. But remember the audit the Fed? That actually made it into the Republican platform. And I think it even went further than just auditing. And then we had and this happened during the Reagan administration. Ron Paul was even a part of it. It was a gold commission, and to look at the possibility of the backing of the currency, gold and silver, or some commission, or some standards. And there's not going to be any more talk about that unless Rand Paul brings it up in 2016. But again, just by raising the specter, at least allowing for some of these issues, it plants seeds. It increases the education. But the GOP and Romney are still blaming Hurricane Sandy. Still have the temerity and the audacity to blame Governor Christie for losing the election. Talk about sore losers and talk about a loser. And then I still hear the alternative media saying, Obama couldn't have won. It had to be fixed. Look at the weakling. Although he put up a really tough debate against Gingrich and Obama in the first one, but this guy had so many flaws that it didn't take much. And it really shouldn't have taken much to take Obama out, but they had the wrong candidate at the wrong time. And I believe that in some ways, at some point, he became the fall guy, and just that's that. But to blame Christie, blames the hurricane, rather than just blaming the fact that this guy was the wrong candidate, it was the wrong guy to pit against the incumbent. That's it, and. All these things could play a role, play a factor, but they didn't even need a fix. They really didn't. I'm Tom Donahue for Tom Donahue Reports. The website is tomdonahuereports.com. Thank you so much for joining us, whether it's the stream, whether it's the podcast, whether it's our 24/7 channel or Stitcher. We thank you indeed, and have a great holiday upcoming. and we look forward to the next broadcast and you joining us.